The lake was called Little Presque, though nobody I knew ever called it that. It sat about 40 minutes off the main road east of Marquette, and to get to the spot I liked, you had to take a logging track that the map didn't bother showing anymore. 3 days. That was the plan. Solo, off-grid, just me and the pike and the coffee I'd been saving for the trip. I got there on a Thursday afternoon in the middle of September. The birches were already going yellow at the edges. Air smelled like wet pine and cold water, that specific Upper Peninsula smell you can't really describe unless you grew up around it. I set the tent maybe 20 feet from the shore on a flat patch I'd used twice before, backed the Ranger up under the cedars and locked it. Habit. There's nobody out there for miles, but I always lock the truck. I noticed him around 4. The lake is narrow, more of an oxbow than a real lake, maybe a quarter-mile across at the widest point. On the far shore, tucked in near a stand of dead tamarack, was a small aluminum boat, green, 1 person in it. He wasn't casting, he wasn't drifting. The boat wasn't even anchored properly as far as I could tell. It was just sort of nosed into the reeds. He was sitting facing me. I waved, force of habit again. You see another guy out on a lake this remote, you wave. He didn't wave back. He didn't move at all, actually. And after a second, I figured he was probably dozing, or maybe reading something in his lap. I went back to setting up the rod. Every 10 minutes or so, I'd glance up. He was still there, same posture. Around sunset, I gave up trying to fish and cooked a can of chili on the little propane burner. When I looked up again, the boat was gone. Fine. I told myself he'd probably paddled around the bend to wherever he was camped. Some old guy from Munising who liked his quiet. That was the story I settled on, and I went to bed listening to the loons. Friday morning, I woke up to fog thick enough to hide the far shore completely. I made coffee, fished for a couple hours off the point, and actually pulled in a decent walleye. Threw it back because I was too lazy to clean it. Around 11, the fog started lifting in strips, the way it does when the sun gets high enough. The boat was back. It was closer, not dramatically. It hadn't crossed the lake or anything, but it was maybe 200 yards nearer than the day before, tucked into a different pocket of shoreline, and I could see him a little better now. Older guy, from what I could tell, ball cap, dark jacket, sitting the same way, facing me, both hands resting on his knees. No rod, no tackle box that I could see, just him. I lifted a hand, nothing back. I want to be honest about what I did next, because looking back, I keep circling it. I didn't leave. I didn't even really consider leaving. I figured a guy with a boat has every right to sit on a lake and not fish. Maybe he was bird watching. Maybe he'd had a stroke last year, and this was his way of getting outside. My uncle used to sit on his porch for 6 hours a day after his surgery and stare at the driveway. People do that. So I fished. I made lunch. I read half a paperback in the folding chair with my back to him, because it was starting to feel weird sitting there facing him like it was a contest. When I turned around again around 3, he was still there. Same position, same distance. I started paying attention to whether he ever moved. Over the next couple hours, I watched him out of the corner of my eye while I pretended to sort tackle. He didn't move his head. He didn't shift his weight. He didn't scratch, didn't drink from anything, didn't lift a phone. If somebody had told me I was looking at a mannequin propped up in a boat, I would have believed it. Except that once, just once, he leaned forward slightly and then back, like a person adjusting how they were sitting. That was the only movement I caught all afternoon. Around dusk, he was gone again. I hadn't seen him leave. I didn't sleep great Friday night, kept hearing things I would normally write off. A branch dropping, something moving through the ferns on the ridge behind camp, a splash that was too heavy for a fish and too light for a beaver. I lay there in the sleeping bag with the flashlight next to my hand and listened until whatever it was stopped. And then I listened to the quiet, which was worse. Around 2 in the morning, I heard what I'm pretty sure was a paddle. 1 stroke, then nothing. I stayed in the tent. Saturday morning, I unzipped the flap, intending to pack up and leave. I'd already decided during the night. Whatever this was, bird watcher or lonely old man or something else, I didn't want another day of it. I was going to eat something, break camp, and be on the road by 10. The lake was empty. No boat on the far shore. No boat on my side. Nothing tucked in the reeds. The water was flat and gray under a low sky, and there wasn't another human being visible in any direction. For about 90 seconds, I felt genuinely stupid. I'd worked myself up over some retiree who'd probably packed up and gone home last night, and here I was, ready to bolt like a kid. Then I turned around to grab the coffee pot off the picnic table. My things were on the ground next to the tent. I want to describe this exactly the way I saw it, because I've told the story a few times now, and people always want to make it messier than it was. It wasn't messy. That was the problem. My spare rod, still in its case. My tackle bag. The green plastic tote I keep in the bed of the truck with the propane spares and the rain gear. My cooler, the small one, not the big one. A folded fleece jacket I hadn't touched since spring. My road atlas. All of it stacked in a neat little pile on the pine needles, about 4 feet from the tent door, arranged smallest on top, largest on the bottom, corners squared up. Everything had come out of the truck. I walked over to the Ranger without breathing right. Doors locked, all 4. I checked the tailgate, locked. I looked at the driver's side lock cylinder in the light, and there wasn't a scratch on it, not a mark. Nothing to suggest anybody had jimmied it or drilled it or done anything to it at all. I unlocked it with my key, and the door opened like it always does. The cab was empty of the things that should have been in it. The bed cover was still latched from the inside. The tote had been in the bed under that cover. I don't remember making the decision to leave. I remember being in the driver's seat with the engine running and my hands shaking on the wheel. And I remember realizing the tent was still up, my sleeping bag still in it, my good rod still leaned against the cedar. I left all of it. I put the truck in gear and I drove out on that logging track, faster than that track deserved. I stopped at the county sheriff's office in the next town over. The deputy who took the report was a younger guy, polite, wrote everything down. He asked me twice if I was sure the truck had been locked. I told him yes. He asked if anybody else had a key. I said no. My wife had one on her ring at home, 300 miles away. The dealership had one somewhere on file. That was it. He nodded and kept writing. When I asked whether they'd send somebody out to the lake, he did that thing cops do where they don't quite answer. He said the area wasn't on any regular patrol route. He said if I wanted to head back out with a deputy in a day or two once things freed up, they could take a look. He said probably it was kids, or somebody who'd found the campsite and gotten weird. He didn't sound like he believed the kids part either. I asked him if he wanted the tent back. He said if I wanted to drive back out and get it, that was up to me. I never drove back out. A buddy of mine who does insurance work up in that county told me a year later, over beers, that a guy walking his dog had found a green aluminum boat pulled up in the brush about 2 miles down the shoreline from where I'd camped. No registration numbers, no paddle in it. He said they'd towed it to a lot in town and nobody ever claimed it, and eventually somebody bought it at auction for $80. I asked him if there was anything in the boat. He said there was a folding chair, the cheap kind, set up in the middle of it, facing the bow. That's really all I've got. I still fish. I don't camp alone anymore, and I don't go back to that part of the UP, but I still fish. Sometimes at a busy launch on a Saturday, I'll catch myself scanning the far shore of whatever lake I'm on, looking for a small green boat with one person in it, sitting very still. I haven't seen one yet. The booking came in on a Tuesday afternoon, and my manager took it before anyone else in the office got a chance to look at it. That's the part I keep coming back to. I worked nights at a place off Highway 64, one of those older resort hotels on the west side of Lake Norman, not the fancy new stuff. This one had been there since the 70s. 3 wings coming off a low central lobby, docks out back, a restaurant that closed at 10. In July, we were usually full, mostly families from Charlotte, a few boat people up from South Carolina. Standard summer stuff. The 3rd wing was the smallest, 9 rooms on the ground floor, 9 upstairs, 18 total. It faced away from the water, toward the pines. Cheapest rooms in the place because you couldn't see the lake from any of them. Someone rented the whole thing, cash, through a guy who came in around 4 in the afternoon, khakis and a polo, driving a rental Kia. He didn't give his own name, said he was booking on behalf of a corporate retreat, paid the full week up front in hundreds, plus a deposit. My manager Ellen took it. She told me later she'd asked for a company name and he'd said something like a wellness group out of Raleigh, and she wrote down what he told her without checking anything. The money was good. It was July. She didn't push. They showed up at 1:20 in the morning. I was on desk. 3 vans in the loop out front, white, no markings. The doors slid open more or less at the same time and people started coming out. I counted 18, men and women, all of them adults. Most looked between 30 and 50, regular clothes, jeans, hoodies, a couple of them in windbreakers even though it was almost 80 degrees at that hour. Nobody talked. I don't mean they were quiet. I mean nobody said a word, not to each other, not to me. The polo guy from earlier walked in first, put a folder on the counter with the room list already written out, who gets which key. He passed the keys back to 2 women who then handed them out to the group without ever looking at the numbers, like they already knew which one they were getting. The whole check-in took maybe 4 minutes. I said, "Good evening. Welcome to the property. Breakfast is in the main building until 10. The polo guy nodded once. Nobody else even glanced at me. Then they walked down to the 3rd wing together, in a line, luggage in hand, and the doors closed behind them. I stood at the desk for a minute after, and I remember thinking, okay, that was strange, but I've worked nights at hotels for 6 years, and strange is on the menu. Church groups do things like that. Wedding parties get quiet when they're tired. Some AA retreats keep silence hours. I filed it under weird and went back to the schedule. By morning, the polo guy was gone. He never came back that I saw. The next 4 days were the same pattern. They ordered food to the rooms, 3 times a day, from the restaurant. Always the same runner brought it, always trays left outside the doors after. No housekeeping. When Marisol tried to go down there on day 2 with fresh towels, one of the women opened her door a crack, took the stack, and closed it again without saying anything. Marisol said the woman didn't even look at her face, just at the towels, and then at the door. I asked Ellen if that seemed off. Ellen said as long as they weren't damaging anything, she didn't care. We had a wedding coming in on Saturday. She had bigger problems. Nobody from the 3rd wing came to the pool. Nobody came to the dock. Nobody came to the restaurant or the lobby or the little gift shop with the boat magnets. In 4 days, I didn't lay eyes on a single one of them. On the 5th night, that changed. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I was at the desk doing the audit reports and I heard a door open down the 3rd wing hallway. That wing shares a corridor with the vending alcove near the lobby. So if you're standing at the front desk, you can see the last stretch of it through the archway. I looked up because a door opening at that hour usually means somebody wants ice or the machines out of Sprite. A man stepped out of one of the rooms, younger than most of the group I'd seen at check-in, maybe late 20s. Dark hair, plain t-shirt, no shoes. He took 2 steps into the hallway and then he saw me. He froze. I've had a lot of guests look at me over the years. Drunk ones, confused ones. He didn't look like either of those. He looked like a person who'd walked into the wrong room at a party and just now realized it. His whole face changed. Not scared exactly, more like he was recalculating something very fast. We looked at each other for maybe 4 seconds, long enough that I started to say, "You need anything?" And I got the first word out. Before I finished, he was back in the room. Door shut. No sound. No ice, no vending machine, nothing. I sat there with my mouth still shaped around the sentence. I told myself he was probably embarrassed to be seen without shoes on. That's what I decided. I wrote nothing down. I finished the audit. Around 4, I did my walkthrough, and when I passed the 3rd wing hallway, I noticed the light under his door was still on. So was the light under 2 others. The 6th day I was off from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I slept, ran errands, ate at a Bojangles by the highway, watched half a movie. Normal day off. I came back for the 11 to 7 shift at 10:45, and Kevin, the guy on evening, said everything had been quiet. Third wing hadn't ordered dinner, which was the first time all week. He figured they were finally packing up since checkout was Sunday morning anyway. Around midnight, I stepped out back for maybe 6 minutes. There's a spot behind the kitchen loading dock where the staff smokes. I don't smoke, but sometimes I go stand out there when I need air. I was gone long enough to text my sister back and walk to the ice machine and come back. When I got to the front desk, the loop out front was empty. At first I didn't register it, then I did. No vans. No cars parked in front of the third wing. I walked down the hallway. All the doors on the ground floor were pulled shut. I knocked on the first one. Nothing. I used my master. The room was empty. Bed gone. I don't mean unmade. I mean the mattress and box spring were pulled off the frame and stacked against the far wall. In the middle of the floor was a folding table that hadn't been there when they checked in. On the table, nothing. But there were small, torn corners of paper on the carpet around the legs, the kind you get when somebody's been feeding a shredder and missing pieces. A power strip was still plugged into the wall. The second room was the same. Third, same. Different furniture layouts, but the same setup. Beds moved out of the way, tables in the middle, extension cords, scraps of paper. In one of the upstairs rooms, somebody had run a long cable from a wall outlet along the baseboard to the closet and taped it down. The cable was still there. Whatever plugged into it wasn't. In the last room on the second floor, there was a laptop on the floor by the window, closed, warm to the touch when I picked it up, like it had been on not long ago. Cheap case, no stickers, nothing written on it. I opened it. Password screen. I closed it again, and I stood there in the middle of the room, and I noticed my hands were shaking a little, which surprised me because up to that moment I hadn't felt scared, just confused. I called Ellen. She came in at 1 in the morning in flip-flops. She called the sheriff. 2 deputies came out first, then somebody else in plain clothes who never said what agency. They walked the wing with flashlights, took photos of every room, bagged the laptop, bagged the power strips, bagged a few things from the trash cans I hadn't looked at. In one bathroom trash can was a stack of latex gloves. In another, a burner phone box with the phone missing. The guy in plain clothes asked me to describe the check-in 3 separate times. Then he asked me to describe the man in the hallway. What was he wearing? How tall? Any tattoos? Any accent when he almost spoke? Did he look at anything specific in the lobby? Did I see his hands? I told him what I could. He wrote it down and didn't tell me any of what he was thinking. They kept the wing sealed off for 2 more days. Nobody at the hotel got told what any of it was about. I asked twice. Ellen asked more than twice. Nothing came back. The rooms got cleaned. The tables were taken away by somebody in a truck that wasn't ours. And by the following Wednesday, the third wing was renting again to regular guests. Ellen changed the rental policy the same week. You can't book a whole wing anymore without a company name we can verify, a credit card on file, an ID for at least 1 guest per room. She said it was corporate. I don't know if it was corporate or if it was her. I worked there another 1.5 years. Nothing else like that ever happened. The polo guy never came back. Nobody from that group, as far as I know, was ever identified to us. The laptop, whatever was on it, never got mentioned again. The thing I keep coming back to isn't the empty rooms. It's the man in the hallway, the way his face changed when he saw me, like he was working out, in real time, whether it was going to matter that I'd seen him at all. The house next door on Bandera Road has been a rental for as long as I've owned mine, 22 years. I've seen families, a divorced dad with 2 boys, a pair of nurses, an old woman who kept parakeets. People come, people go. That's how it works out here on the north side of San Antonio, where the streets curl behind the loop, and half the block is owned by whoever the owners rent through. The new ones showed up in October, 2 guys and a girl, all in their 20s, polite. The taller one waved at me the first morning when I was pulling weeds out of the crack in my driveway. said, "Good morning, sir," called me sir. You don't hear that as much as you used to. I retired out of Fort Sam Houston in 2015 after 31 years. First 15 were logistics. Last 16 were counter-intel liaison work with an alphabet soup of agencies I still don't say out loud. My wife passed in 2019. It's just me and the yard and the coffee pot now. I keep the same routine I've kept since I was 22. Up at 5, coffee on the porch, watch the street wake up. So I notice things. It's not something I turn on. It just sits there in the back of my head, cataloging. The first thing was the cars. A silver Altima the first Tuesday, a red F150 with a lift kit that Wednesday, a dark green Jetta the Thursday, then a white Camry, then a two-tone Bronco that looked older than I felt. None of them stayed long, 20 minutes, sometimes 10. A few times, just enough for someone to walk to the door, go inside, and come back out before the driver had finished a cigarette on the curb. I told myself people have friends. My daughter's kid has friends over all the time up in San Marcos, and she doesn't blink at it. Kids that age float around. Maybe these three were popular. Then I started noticing the times. 2 in the afternoon, 10 at night, 6 in the morning. Once at 4:15, I know because I was up for the bathroom and heard a door close soft, the way people close a door when they're trying not to close it. I looked through the blinds and saw a man in a hoodie walking back down the driveway to a running truck. He wasn't young. He was maybe 50. He didn't look at the house. He didn't look at anything. He got in and drove off with the lights off until he hit the stop sign at the end of the block. That was the first one that stuck with me. The next morning, I made a mental note of the plate on the next visitor. Texas, partial. I didn't write it down. I don't write things down anymore. Not for civilian stuff. I just held it in my head and let it sit next to the others. By the end of the second week, I'd counted 11 different vehicles. Not one repeat. That's when I stopped calling it friends. The 3 tenants themselves came and went on a normal schedule. Well, normal for people who don't seem to have jobs. The girl left around 11 most mornings in a beige Corolla and came back late afternoon with a grocery bag or a coffee cup. The taller guy jogged. Actually jogged. 4 miles, I clocked him one morning, going and coming. The shorter one I saw less. He'd stand in the front yard sometimes with his phone and just look up and down the street while he talked. Not pacing, standing, facing the road and the yard. That was the thing I couldn't stop coming back to. You rent a house, you don't care about the yard. I've watched 20 years of tenants leave beer cans in the flower bed, kid toys out in the rain, a mattress on the curb for 6 weeks one time. This yard was spotless. No bikes, no hose left out. No trash can pulled up early or left at the curb too long. Not a single Amazon box on the porch, ever. And everyone gets Amazon boxes. The taller guy would sweep the driveway on Sunday mornings. Actually sweep it, with a push broom, corner to corner, the way you do when you want to make sure something didn't stay behind. The grass got cut every Friday by a crew I didn't recognize. The old tenants used the same guy I use, a man named Rudy who's been doing yards on this street since Clinton was in office. These new ones brought in a truck with no lettering on it. 2 guys. In and out in 20 minutes. No chit-chat with anyone. Around the end of October, I was carrying groceries in, and the girl was at her mailbox. She smiled and asked how I was doing. I said, "Good. How about you?" She said, "Good." Then she said, real casual, "You keep an eye on the block, huh? I see you out on the porch every morning." I said something about being an old man and needing my coffee. She laughed. It was a nice laugh. She had good teeth and clean hair, and she looked me right in the eye. Then she said, "It's nice. Makes us feel safe." I went inside and put the groceries down and stood in the kitchen for probably 5 minutes without moving. There's a way people say things when they mean the words, and there's a way people say things when they're checking to see how you'll react. 31 years of my life were spent in rooms where the second kind of talking is the whole job. She wasn't threatening me. She was measuring me. The next morning, a black Tahoe pulled up at 6:40. A man got out. Big guy, 40-something, wearing a windbreaker on a warm morning. Windbreaker means something under it you don't want to show. He didn't knock. The door opened before he got there. He was inside for maybe 4 minutes. When he came out, he was carrying a gym bag he hadn't been carrying going in. I sat with my coffee and watched him drive off, and I thought about who I still knew in this city. Ray and I were at Fort Sam together in the 90s before he went civilian. He's been with San Antonio PD Narcotics for close to 20 years. We do lunch maybe twice a year at a place off Broadway that does chicken fried steak the way my wife used to. I called him that afternoon. I didn't tell him what I thought. I made a point of not telling him what I thought. I just laid out what I'd seen. The cars, the times, the visitors, the yard, the sweep, the gym bag, the girl at the mailbox. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You still on Bandera?" I said yes. He said, "I'll come by tomorrow. Don't do anything. Just be home." He came by around 10 in the morning in his own car, a beat-up Silverado he's had since I've known him. He parked at my place. We sat on my back porch, not the front, and drank coffee and talked about the Cowboys for 40 minutes. Every so often he'd get up and look at something in my backyard, which shares a fence line with theirs. He never looked over. He'd look at the fence, or the tree, or his phone, but I could tell. Before he left, he put his cup in my sink and said, "You did the right thing calling." I said, "Am I wrong?" He said, "You're not wrong. Sit tight. Don't change your routine. Don't stop having your coffee out front. If they ask, you saw me because I'm your buddy, and my wife made me get out of the house." I said, "Okay." He said one more thing on the way to the truck. "If anything changes, you call me. Not 911, me." Then he was gone. For the next couple of weeks, I did exactly what he said. Coffee at 5, nod at the taller one when he jogged past, waved at the girl once when she was getting the mail. She waved back, and I made myself smile the way you smile at a neighbor. The shorter guy was outside less. I noticed that. He'd stopped standing in the yard with his phone, but the cars kept coming. If anything, there were more of them. I didn't sleep great those 2 weeks. Not scared exactly, just aware. I kept the porch light off at night for the first time in years, because with it off, I could see out and they couldn't see in. Old habit, came back easy. The morning it happened was a Tuesday in mid-November. I was awake before the alarm the way you sometimes are, staring at the ceiling in the dark. I heard engines, not one, several, coming down the block slow, the way vehicles move when they're trying to arrive together without being loud about it. I didn't get up. I didn't go to the window. I lay there in bed and listened. There was a knock, and then there wasn't a knock anymore. And then there were voices, several voices, sharp and clipped the way voices get when men are moving through a house on a plan. It didn't last long, maybe 6 minutes of real noise. Then the quieter part, which took a lot longer. Doors opening and closing, boots on concrete, a dog once from the yard, radios. I got up around 7, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table where the front window doesn't see me. I let it be theirs. I didn't need to watch. Around 11, Ray sent me one text. It just said, "All good, talk soon." I never did find out exactly what they were running out of that house, and I didn't ask. Ray took me to lunch 3 weeks later at the chicken fried steak place, and we talked about his grandkids and the Cowboys, and a fishing trip he wanted to do in the spring. He didn't bring it up, neither did I. The house sat empty until February. Then a young couple moved in with a baby and a beagle that barks at squirrels and leaves toys out on the lawn. Rudy cuts their grass now. The taller one, if I ever saw him again, I wouldn't know it. I only saw his face a handful of times, mostly from the side, mostly at a distance. I still take my coffee on the porch at 5. I still watch the street wake up.